obscure time. So this is a trip I took in 2009, so 10 years ago. I went by myself to the South Caucasus, and I'll show you what that is in a minute, but I wanted to show you this because I'm going to present Georgia as a fairly peaceful, pleasant place to live with nice people, and that's all true. The thing is, they have been, at one time they were part of the Soviet Union, and of course in 1991 the Soviet Union broke up. But Russia is still on their case. And that's what's going on now. And now Russia has suspended all the airline flights from Georgia. They're trying to take over the parliament, and these people are revolting against Russia, Russia's influence in Georgia. Russia's right next to Georgia, so it's very susceptible. But they're quite different countries. And I don't know who is helping Georgia out. I don't know that we're their allies or not, but it's too bad what's happening. When I was there in 2009, about 2 weeks before, the Russians had marched to within 40 miles of the capital, and the Georgians were able to push them back. And I think Russia's been unrelenting about trying to get troops in there. But let me just present to you the Georgia that I found so charming. This is my second trip I was there.
What language do they use?
They speak Georgian. I'll show it to you. So anyway, this was a trip to the South Caucasus. The North Caucasus are another story, which all are having trouble with Russia. The South Caucasus are essentially Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, and I'll show you on the map. We can talk about Armenia some other time, and I think I have showed slides from Armenia and also Azerbaijan, two very interesting places. So this is how it is. Georgia's on top, and you can see, yes, you can see. The top of Georgia is the Caucasus, the mountains, and it's very cold up there. You'll see pictures in the snow. And Tbilisi is the capital. You can see that. But Batumi is on the Black Sea, on the left there. And actually I went there, but I don't seem to have any pictures in this slideshow of Batumi. And then below that is Armenia with the capital Yerevan, and to the south is Azerbaijan with the capital Baku on the Caspian Sea. All quite absolutely interesting places. So it's on the border, the Caucasus, between Europe and Asia, and situated between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Home to the Caucasus Mountains, including Europe's highest mountain, Mount Elbrus. If you want food from that area, there's a new restaurant in, what's it called? Renaissance, called the Himalayan Restaurant. And because the Caucasus are part of the Himalayas, the food is very similar. So the North Caucasus includes Dagestan, Chechnya, North Ossetia, and part of Russia. And those places are places I haven't been to yet. And there's a lot of unrest there because, again, Russia's trying to get those back. And they are largely Muslim. So there you can see that Russia's right on top of Georgia. By the way, I just came back from Russia, so I'll show my trip to Russia in July, the third Thursday in July. So Armenia and Georgia are Christian. You'll see that they are quite Christian Orthodox. And Georgia is the largest and wealthiest of the three countries because of oil, although Azerbaijan's catching up. Armenia is the poorest. They all have wonderful music traditions, which you'll see. And the three languages are different, the currency is different. They're quite different. They're all republics, and they've been in the midst of wars for centuries. There's a lot of diversity in the Caucasus, we'll see that later. This guy is no longer the president, and they do have a democracy, so they do vote for president. They have a rational succession of presidents. He is not in now. The capital is Tbilisi. Population of the country is only 4.6 million. The language is Georgian, the religion is Georgian Orthodox, which is a lot like Russian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox. And the government is a democratic, semi-presidential republic. So that is the capital, that's the House of Parliament. And the writing that you see on top is Georgian, undecipherable to me. Completely different alphabet than is used in Armenia or Russia or Azerbaijan. I was in Tbilisi before when it was part of the Soviet Union, found it very charming. And I'll just show you some scenes from Tbilisi and then around Tbilisi. This is the bathhouse. You find these in Southeast Asia. This is a protest that was going on not while I was there, but now. I got it from the Georgian news. And they are pretty upset about Georgia's encroachment. This is the bathhouse again. This is where Chekhov took his bath. And I'm not sure whether Chekhov was Georgian or why he was taking his bath in Tbilisi, but that is reputed to be where he took his bath. And that's around. It's a pretty city. This is a kind of woodwork on the balconies that you see around Russia. I saw it a lot on this trip. And beautiful tile work. It's a mountainous city. You can see the bathhouses in the front here. This cathedral, as you'll see soon, is very beautiful and very active. So this was, I had a guide, and she took me to the cathedral on Sunday, and there were at least 3 weddings going on. They take it very seriously. Not to cast any aspersions on these very nice people, but they do have long noses, some of them.
Very Greek.
They look Greek.
Greek nose.
Yeah. I think you're right about the influence of Greece, but I don't know enough about the history. And they wear a lot of vestments. They have a christening going on, at least one. It's a beautiful ceremony. It's very moving. She brought her kids. Her daughter's all dressed up and she's wearing her blue jeans, but there they are at church. Georgia's a very cultured place. The first time I went there, we had a tour, and the woman who gave us the tour, her husband was the first violist of the Georgia Symphony. And she took us to a cemetery, and in the cemetery were a lot of statues. In fact, there are a lot of statues around the city. And they were all artists and writers, not military people necessarily. It's a very, very cultured place. But that top writing is Georgian writing. Taking a little break. So the cathedral's way up on the mountain, and you can see the river running through the city. It's a busy city, plenty of cars, plenty of traffic. St. George, that you would expect to find him in Greece, yes, right. Their handiwork is beautiful. This is a carpet. And there's some more wooden balconies, and hotel. Lots of public art. This is a stationary train. I don't think it went anywhere. I hope it didn't go anywhere. This lamplighter, this is a statue. She's a very pretty Georgian girl. I'm not sure that this is bullets in his outfit or what this is, but he's all dressed up for Sunday. Here's the top of the lamplighter, and there's the bottom of the lamplighter. This is a statue of a guy on the street. I got very attached to him. There's something in the Georgian character, sort of a melancholy and good sense of humor. I think he personifies that. A bas-relief in the Houses of Parliament. Look at that chimney. This was in a restaurant. So we drove out into the countryside, which is very pretty. There's a little market there. If you need a pig's head, there it is. A lot of pretty churches. That's a typical interior of an Orthodox church. This is a little city outside of Tbilisi. Signagi, yeah. There it is. I remember the first time my husband and I were there, and we walking down all these side streets, and practically all of them had grapes growing in their arbors in front of their house. And many times they were up there on ladders picking the grapes and offering them to us. And then when you go to the marketplace, there's thousands, felt like thousands of bottles of different kinds of wine that are homemade from these grapes. It's a very nice, rich, red, mostly red wine. There's some of it. Pomegranates. Oh, I can't see, but has anybody been to the Georgia Pomegranate restaurant on El Cajon Boulevard?
No.
If you want Russian food, it's very good. It's about 2000 El Cajon Boulevard. It's a very good, authentic, fun Georgian restaurant, and it's called the Georgia Pomegranate. This was my flyer that's supposed to have been up everywhere. I love this guy. And he's holding pomegranates. He looks very Georgian to me. Grapes, grapes, grapes.
They don't export their wine.
I never remember having any Georgian wine outside of Georgia. There must be some. Here's another sculpture. So in this little town of Saganaki, whatever it is, there's a museum there with a lot of these these old pictures, not Russian, but Georgian pictures. It was interesting the first time I was in Russia, when it was part of when it was the Soviet Union. They had different hotels for each of the Soviet states, and the Georgian hotel was the one I preferred because there was a lot of drinking, just People were very cheerful, very generous, and a lot of fun. I liked Georgia then, and I still like it. Stalin was from Georgia, which we'll talk about soon. A lot of music, too.
Is there music like Russian music?
Sort of like
Similar.
Russian music, a little more cheerful. Yeah, I guess. Another statue. Could be Don Quixote, I guess.
Yes, the sound of it.
So, back to Tbilisi, and when I was there before, we went to the Opera House, which is right in the middle of Tbilisi, and all the tickets there were $1, and you can see that there's quite a lot of seats there. And I think we went there to see a ballet, and I sat next to these little girls that were aspiring ballerinas. And of course we couldn't exchange words, so we exchanged drawings. And that was a lot of fun. So I went back there for a concert this time. And again, the tickets were still $1, or the equivalent. And people come in their military uniforms. It's a big deal to go to the Opera House. There it is. They have a lot of visiting music and plays, I think, too. So the man standing there in the long coat is the conductor, and also in this concert, the composer. So the whole concert was his work. And I thought it was beautiful, based on a lot of Georgian folk tunes. Very easy to listen to, beautiful music, I thought. They look like us. There he is, getting flowers. He did a wonderful job conducting and composing. Another public art. So one day we went up to the Caucasus Mountains, and it was a perfectly lovely day in Tbilisi, but as we got higher and higher, it got colder and colder, and then it started to snow. Right on the horses. And that's what it looked like. It was just a couple of hours after we'd left Tbilisi. We didn't go in this bus. But there's a hotel there. People live there. And finally, we stopped in this place and got food. Excuse me. The snow is getting to me. And a little heat. So, if you go to that Himalayan restaurant, you'll see food like this. Blini and salads and momos. Momos is the specialty food of the Himalayas. So, it doesn't matter whether you're in Bhutan or the Himalayas in India or in Georgia, you get momos.
What is momos?
Momos is a dumpling, you'll see. This was our driver and my guide here. So this is them making momos in the back room, these two women. And actually on my trip to Russia recently, we got a lesson on how to make pelmeni, and pelmeni is sort of the Russian momos. And it's a flour dough. She's cutting out the circles by hand, but there's a machine, not a machine, but a thing that you put over the dough, a circular dough, and it cuts out all the round things with this machine. Or you can do it with a cup or a glass. Anyway, you have round pieces of dough, which are probably universal. It's like in China has them, certainly. And then there's like a mincemeat dough. And if you go to the European deli on Regent's Road, there's 3 different kinds of pelmeni. Pelmeni is very similar to this. So stuff with meat, stuff with vegetables, different kinds of meat, chicken. And then So there they are, little packages of delicious stuff.
Chinese balls.
It's like the Chinese bao.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, not quite like bao, no.
Do they bake this?
More like dumplings, huh?
Do they bake this?
They taste delicious.
Do they bake
Do they
it?
bake it?
Bake it, no. So they get
Steam.
dumped in this broth,
Steam.
boiled,
Boil.
Is that oil or just water? Or
It's
broth?
a
Combination?
flavored broth,
Ah, ooh, healthy.
and then they rise to the top,
It's like a jiaozi.
and there they are.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
Yes.
cute.
Yeah, so it's very much like Chinese dumplings or
Yeah, jiaozi.
kreplach, and they're delicious. Of course, in Russia we had sour cream with them. For some reason they didn't have sour cream. So then we went back out in the road, and the cattle were being herded in the snow. It's a very beautiful country with all this water and mountains and greenery. And they do have several English language papers, if I remember correctly. So one night I decided I wanted to see some folk dancing. And I was recommended to a place outside of Tbilisi, about 15 miles outside, and I took a taxi there. And it was this wonderful, beautiful restaurant with delicious food and lots and lots of folk dancing, and there they are.
Oh,
I didn't have video at the time, but singing. It was delightful. Sorry, a video would have been perfect. You'll have to imagine what it sounded like. There's a samovar. Saw plenty of those in Russia. It was a couple of hours of music and dancing. It was a lot of fun. And drinking. And sword fights.
their uniforms are different.
Yeah, they're very typical. This handsome guy is a Georgian waiter. Georgian hats. Horns. Socks. Gets cold up there. He's probably a priest, I'm not sure. People don't look like him walking the streets. He's sort of old-fashioned looking. So in Gori, which is about 40 miles, maybe 30, 40 miles outside of Tbilisi, is the home of Joseph Stalin. And there's a museum there. And when I grew up, Stalin was Uncle Joe, and he was part of the trio, Churchill and Roosevelt, that sort of saved the world during World War II. So it wasn't until way after the war that I found out that he was really a bad guy. So seeing him in this museum where he's depicted as a good guy, I found very emotionally confusing. There he is with Truman. Now, I guess he actually said this. We don't let them have ideas. Why should we let them have guns?
Oh boy.
How's that for saying? Then he said, 1 death is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic. So make of that what you will. So Stalin was responsible for the rapid transformation of the USSR from an agrarian society into an industrial power. However, the economic changes coincided with the imprisonment of millions of people in Soviet correctional labor camps and the deportation of many others to remote areas. The initial upheaval in agriculture disrupted food production and contributed to the catastrophic Soviet famine of 1932 to 1933. You know, we talk about 7 million Jews dying in Germany and surrounding areas, but about 20 million Russians died between Stalin killing them and Germany killing them during World War II. Among the Bolshevik revolutionaries who took part in the Russian Revolution of 1917, Stalin was appointed General Secretary of the party's Central Committee in 1922. He subsequently managed to consolidate power following the 1924 death of Lenin, though suppressing Lenin's criticism and expanding the functions of his role, all the while eliminating any opposition. That was his modus operandi. The opposition disappeared, were sent to Siberia, or were killed. In 1939, Stalin entered into a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany. That didn't work very well. Germany later violated the agreement and launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. You still hear about that in Russia. Despite heavy human and territorial losses, Soviet forces managed to halt the Nazi incursion after the decisive battles of Moscow and Stalingrad. How that happened is almost a miracle that Russia came out of that, because there was a siege for, I think, 3 months where there was no food, no supplies, anything could get into what was then Stalingrad, which is now St. Petersburg. After defeating the Axis powers on the Eastern Front, the Red Army captured Berlin in May 1945, effectively ending the war in Europe for the Allies. So really, Stalin was responsible for ending that war. The Soviet Union subsequently emerged as one of two recognized world superpowers, and that's, of course, when the Cold War started. Here's the three. You could tell Roosevelt, this was in Yalta, I think. Roosevelt was pretty close to death by that time. This is something that I read somewhere, that Stalin had 400 people from his city, Gori, killed every week.
Well,
This is his home, and underneath is his father's drugstore, pharmacy. And he's still a hero here. I found that a very emotional experience going to that Stalin museum. Oops, that's the end. So we're finished. Is that right? That's right. Okay, so